Good afternoon, everyone. I have the unenviable task of being the last speaker of the day. So I hope you're still awake because I have, instead of statistics and a lot of expertise that my co-panelists have shared, I'm going to share something that we're doing which might actually shed some light on how we might be able to approach these problems in the future. We at Balipara Foundation have recently launched a framework that we call Rural Futures. We are actually, I believe Ranjit spoke about it earlier this morning. And the idea here is simply to say, how can we actually make our rural areas more viable in terms of quality of life and systems that we actually aspire to even in urban areas in order to prevent the general trend of urban migration that is increasing from taking over all our governance and policymakers' mind spaces. The key issue that we deal with constantly is this trying to find a balance between our biodiversity assets and growing human aspirations. At Balipara Foundation, we've been working in this space for over a decade, and we've had some significant milestones which have provided some learnings for us. For example, we started Wild Mashir, which is a social enterprise, and what we considered a living prototype of naturenomics, nature and economics, where the entire property is actually run by the local communities. In 2007, we actually restored a barren parking lot, or we began restoring a barren parking lot by simply planting some of the endemic species that we were seeing in the forests around us, and then leaving it alone for the next 10 years. And today, that area is almost like a mini forest, and it's thriving. We have many species of birds and butterflies which come there. And the third milestone for us has been the Eastern Himalayan Naturenomics Forum, which initially started as a wildlife conference, and much like the debates that we have been seeing over the years, actually grew into exploring all the different aspects. The reason I point out these three are because one signifies the importance of including communities. The other signifies the importance of leaving our natural ecosystems alone. And the third one signifies actually expanding our dialogues. We cannot be looking at narrow niches in assessing all the different discussions that we've been having all day today, and we will be having tomorrow as well. And we need to also look and learn through experiences. These are some of the experiences that we've had which have led to Rural Futures. We've had multiple different experiments of small and large scale. And the one single learning that the one single thing we've learned from all of these experiments is that the only experiments that succeed are the ones that are human-centric. And as a result, we actually came up with the framework of Rural Futures, which is a human-centric approach towards enhancing the discovery of novel and innovative solutions to pressing conservation issues, primarily in the rural areas. Because as we've established throughout this day, we may sit in urban centers and talk about biodiversity and the issues surrounding biodiversity, but we also are putting a large onus on our rural communities who are naturally the guardians of these ecosystems. And in order to do that, we need to provide them with the frameworks and the tools to actually protect these natural resources. For example, a villager in India who cannot guarantee whether he or she can put 2 square meals on their table every day cannot be expected to protect your forests just because you told them to do so. we cannot put that responsibility on them without providing them the fundamentals that they require to be successful at doing it. The Rural Futures approach really looks at increased community participation, employment through ecosystem-based services, a stewardship behavior that is basically making them owners of these natural assets, and the propagation of the value of botanic knowledge. We're looking at different levers that might address these issues, and that is not to say that all of these levers will apply to every single village in this country, but that these are the essential levers that need to be looked at. Some villages may be better off in some areas than others, and that is also something that we need to address. And that is really about, talking about how can we look at creating equitable assets in these villages. It works in two parts, one of which we've already started. We always look at starting with habitat restoration. And this is because, as Anish pointed out earlier, that the forests are the source of most of our rivers and water systems. We've heard throughout the day all the other services that these forests provide. And simply to say that this is the lowest hanging fruit, so to speak, to get the communities involved and then build on it from there. So through community-led habitat restoration, we're also trying to reinstate the sustainable forestry and through timber and wild food. This goes into then working to develop social assets, and in that process also increase the skill sets and the knowledge that is inherent and available in these rural areas, to building sustainable business models and prototypes, which then feeds into this entire cycle, which basically makes it regenerative. It's not a short-term plan. We can't do this tomorrow and measure success or failure. We have to look at longer timelines. We have to look at this on an 8 to 10-year horizon. And that's what we are attempting to do, because it not only will that allow us to understand the changing needs of these communities and learn how to create adaptive models rather than single models that are expected to last for centuries, and also to gain the trust and the participation of these communities in this development. A common goal is to use restoration of habitats and the creation of economic mobility to also create social mobility within these communities. And that can be done through what very simply we put as trees, infrastructure, and revenue. Thank you, and I hope that I haven't exceeded the time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mansi.